nature has placed the role of carrying the pregnancy and bringing forth the child or childbearing on the woman. There is no doubt that the period of pregnancy and thereafter childbearing has its problems if adequate care is not taken. Unfortunately, adequate protection mechanisms are not in place, thus, in some cases, resulting in the death of the mother or child, or even both, the rates depending on the jurisdiction. All over the world, the maternal mortality rate is rising. All effort must therefore be made to reduce maternal death so that women like Helen Kanzira can perform their God-given role of childbearing successfully with adequate and good quality facilities in place, and they can thereafter live to enjoy a very productive life in the society. Participants may be wondering who Helen Kanzira was. In this lecture, Ernest will share. The husband of late Helen Kanzira will tell us who she was. Why is there a lecture in honor of this great woman? Why the Helen Kanzira lecture? Professor Franz Villian, the director, Center for Human Rights, Faculty of Law, University of Pretoria, will tell us the purpose, the aim, and objectives of the annual lecture. Now, this is a 2-hour lecture. We have 3 erudite speakers, distinguished speakers for this lecture. Dr. Folashade Adigbite, a member of the LOC, will be introducing them later to us. 50 minutes has been allotted for this lecture. The lead speaker will speak for 20 minutes. We are going to be very time conscious. The 2 other speakers will take 15 minutes each. We know that participants may want to ask questions arising from this lecture. Please, I kindly request that participants who have questions during the lecture should please put it inside the chat box and we'll take those questions. Please put your name. The vote of thanks will be taken by Dr. Akinola Akitayo, the chairman or the chairperson, LOC of this lecture. I'll now call on Professor Ayo Ashenwa, the Dean, Faculty of Law, University of Lagos, to give a welcome address. Professor Ayodele Ashenwa, over to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Bambushi, the chair of today's lecture. It gives me great pleasure to welcome everyone who is here to this meeting. It gives me great pleasure to welcome everyone who's here to this program, and definitely the program could not possibly be without the presence of our audience, as well as those of us who are the organizers. And on behalf of the University of Lagos, I warmly welcome you to this Helen Kanzira Lecture 2020. The lecture focuses on the concern of reproductive health, and a couple of people might wonder, what has law got to do with reproductive health? But law, I would say, is the life wire of reproductive health, because law as a tool for social engineering happens to be what controls human behavior, choices that we make even in terms of our health-seeking behavior, access to health, the funding of health, and making quality health available. And it's in that sense that we say that the health is a human right, and access to health is a human right. But it also has so happened that reproductive health, when you line up the various health concerns and public health concerns, usually tends to fall very low down the rank. At least that it did for a very long time historically, until we started to draw attention, until the scholars, activists started to draw attention to the gaps. And it is against this backdrop that it has become really critical that we continue to engage with reproductive health, reproductive rights, and the law. And it is for this reason that we at the Faculty of Law were particularly happy when we got the opportunity to host the 2020 Helen Kanzira lecture. This is only one in the continuum of activities that we have been engaged in since about 2003. Around 2003, we worked with a Nigerian NGO to introduce a program that was formally titled Integrating Reproductive Health, in particular maternal health, into the legal education curriculum in Nigeria with support from the Maca Foundation. And through that program, we have been able to make reproductive health and reproductive rights issues concerns in the legal education curriculum. And we were only too glad to have this opportunity. Without wasting much time, I want to say a very big thank you to everyone who's come, acknowledge the opportunity that the Center for Human Rights, University of Pretoria has afforded us to host this program. And I want to thank the speakers who are experts and activists in their own right, who will speak to us about their various experiences and will shed more light. And it is my hope that we will not only learn about where we are in relation to reproductive health in Nigeria, and also extrapolate that to the West Africa sub-region, and then of course the Africa region fully. And I'm hopeful that other scholarship will emanate from what it is that we're doing today. I say thank you very much and welcome.
Professor Bangboche, you are muted, ma.
Sorry about that. Our participants will be wondering why we have the Helen Kanzira lecture. This program is a collaboration of the University of Lagos Faculty of Law and the Center for Human Rights, Faculty of Law, University of Pretoria. So I'll now call on Professor Franz Villeon, who is the Director, Center for Human Rights, Faculty of Law, University of Pretoria, to introduce the Helen Kanzira lecture to us. Over to you, Professor Franz.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity and for introducing me. Yes, I think that our association at the center is with Helen Kanzira in her capacity as a student, and Ernest will later talk about her as a person more broadly. But she came to Pretoria to study for the degree Masters in Human Rights and Democratization in Africa. And it was in the year 2000 as the new millennium started, and it was also the pioneering class. So she was part of the first group of students to study towards the degree that was instituted in that year. She graduated at the end of the year with the degree, and she came back and worked in the field and worked in Uganda, her country of origin. Regretfully, she passed away in the year 2007 in circumstances surrounding childbirth. And we at the center thought that we should see this sad moment as also an opportunity on the one hand to honor and remember Helen Kanzira for the person and the qualities she had as a human being, but also to draw attention to the circumstances of her death and to highlight really the message that what happened to Helen should not and need not have happened, and in the process also to foreground the issues around sexual and reproductive rights of women. So the lecture had since then been presented on an annual basis, and I may mention that in the years that followed, quite a number of very highly well-placed individuals honored us with presenting the lecture. For example, in the year 2012, it was the then High Commissioner for Human Rights, Navi Pillay, who presented the Helen Kanzira Memorial Lecture. And in the year 2017, it was the First Lady of Mozambique who presented, actually, Dr. Iswara Nyusi. And last year, it was our honor to host the President of the South African Supreme Court of Appeal, Justice Mandipa Maya, to present this lecture. So it has really become a moment of reflection and voicing concerns and raising further awareness around the issue of sexual and reproductive rights. Now, initially the lecture took place in Pretoria at the Center for Human Rights, but this master's program is presented by a number of partners, 12 partners at the moment, of which the University of Lagos is one. So hence we are here, I think, for the first time to have the Helen Kanzira lecture presented here at the University of Lagos, although virtually. We would have loved to be there in person, but I think it is just as effective essentially as a virtual event. Over the years, it has gone to a number of our partners. The Helen Kanzira lecture, for example, took place also at Makerere University in Uganda, where Helen did undergraduate studies. But we are now here, and the idea is also to locate the debate. So raise the awareness in a particular setting. And one of the big events that took place after Helen actually studied with us in Pretoria is the adoption of the Maputo Protocol, the protocol to the African Charter on the Rights of Women in Africa. And that protocol, which entered into force in 2005, is, I think, very unique in its foregrounding also of the issues of sexual and reproductive rights. It has this famous Article 14. I'm sure some of the speakers may refer back to that. And there was also the adoption of a general comment. I mention this because just like South Africa, Nigeria is a state party to this Maputo Protocol. And I think one would also maybe bring into the debate, I think it was mentioned, you know, what role does the rights discourse play in this issue that is perhaps a medical issue? I think it is the symbiotic relationship of all disciplines, including law and human rights, that can bring us to understand how to better resolve the great challenges that are still pertaining to reproductive sexual health rights. So those are really the reasons why. And we certainly thank the University of Lagos, everyone involved, the whole team, for hosting us today. We certainly see this as a continuation of our efforts to bring attention, raise awareness around the issues of health and reproductive rights of women. And we thank everyone for attending, and we trust that this will be an event that is worth everyone's attending. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Franz. You said something. A sad moment turned to a good opportunity, a moment of awareness. This is very interesting. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll now go on. Who was Helen Kanzira? Who is this great woman that we are celebrating? That for so many years we've been having annual lectures in her honor. Who else can talk about this great woman but her husband, Ernest, will share. Ernest, you are welcome. Can we know who Helen Kanzira was?
Thank you very much, Professor, for the kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, a good afternoon, a good day, good morning to all of you, wherever you're joining us from. I feel honored and very privileged to be able to speak briefly about who Helen was, for the benefit of those who did not know who she was. Since I will not get an opportunity to do so later, I want to preface my remarks by thanking most sincerely the Center for Human Rights at the University of Pretoria and the Faculty of Law at the University of Lagos for joining hands to honor my best friend by highlighting these issues this year. I'm particularly pleased because despite the challenges posed by COVID, the organizers have still managed to hold the annual lecture using available technologies, and hopefully we can even reach more people than we did in the past from the comfort of their homes or their offices or wherever else. I really thank the individuals behind these and other institutions that have made this possible. I also extend very special thanks to the speakers, Hawa, Shekarau, Dr. Biola, and Professor Okonofua, for accepting to steer today's lecture. These panelists are persons whose professional and personal reputations precede them, and they are leaders in the various fields that we're discussing today: maternal health, activism, and related issues in Africa. So I thank them for sparing what undoubtedly is very precious time to come and share their experiences and enrich the discourse for today's lecture. Now, before I say anything about Helen, I want us to think about our own responsibilities as human beings, so that as we get into today's business, we have it at the back of our minds in what the role each one of us should be playing is. And over the last few weeks, we have all seen matters of racial inequality come to the fore in the US, precipitated largely by the murder of George Floyd, although there are other historical issues. And then we've seen a reaction from all corners of the world, overwhelming, people supporting, people standing in solidarity, people in other extremes, destroying property and so on. But the outpouring of grief and people putting themselves at risk in mass gatherings, even in the face of possible contracting of COVID, says something about the human being. Why would people do this? Perhaps it's because they are empathetic, which is one of the most, one of the best attributes that human beings have. Others, perhaps it is because they abhor injustice, and when they see it, they rise up. Now, I think that those two, empathy and abhorring injustice, are attributes which, if properly put to use, can help and take us a long way in dealing with matters such as the one we're discussing today. When bad things happen, good people ought to speak out, they ought to stand out, they ought to resist, they ought to cause change. When good people do nothing, those bad things continue to happen. So the world rose up because they found it unacceptable that what was being done to a human being in the case of George Floyd was just abhorrent. The person died at the hands of an abusive system, and needlessly. And as African people, I think that we can comfortably say that we are George Floyd in many ways, on many days of our lives. We're trying to breathe in conditions that in many cases are subhuman. The question that I want to pose to you is, are we willing to shape our political, social, and economic destiny so that either ourselves or those who come after us can breathe? Are you willing to accept this responsibility? Now, let me go to Helen. On a rainy afternoon on the 13th day of October in 2007, in a very small village about 25 kilometers north of where I am now, I watched a brilliant white casket being lowered into the ground. That casket bore the remains of a young, beautiful African woman, a dark complexion, average height, average build. She was a lawyer working for the government. She was rising in her profile, providing advice and legal support to the Ministry of Finance in Uganda, particularly the privatization unit. That African woman was Helen. She was also a mother. She was a friend. She was a wife. And the curtains closed on her that day, or maybe to be more precise, 2 days before that, at an upmarket hospital in Kampala. You see, we had gone to that hospital for private maternal medical services because the public medical services were, and sadly are still, shambolic. And that evening, on the 13th, I returned home alone. I went to our bedroom and I cried. Helen was a Christian woman. She deeply loved God. She was friendly. She was pleasant. She was funny. She was motherly. Frequently beaming in confidence. She took her work and her responsibilities very seriously and was always focused. She was a hard worker, nearly indefatigable. She stood against corruption, against abuse of office. She built bridges. She prayed for, she reached out to those who didn't like her. You know, she had overwhelming empathy and was generous to all, especially when she could meet a need. She would not shy away from doing her bit. She carried herself with an inquisitive but cheeky simplicity. When you met Helen, you would not know how much power she actually wielded in the privatization unit where she worked. Always down to earth, she loved spicing her conversations with proverbs and with verses quoted from her favorite book, the Bible. She was friendly with many people who came to her. She was an excellent spirit. She had a very good countenance. She was loving to her children and myself. And if you wanted to see her beam, all you needed to do was ask her about her family. When you said something could not be done, she found a way of doing it. And she shared the very best of her at all times. I have said all these wonderful things about her, and I searched my memory to find 1 or 2 negative things that I could remember. The only one I remember is that she could not sing, however much she tried. But she had a favorite scripture in Psalm 91, verse 16 of the Bible, where it says, with long life, God will satisfy us. And I can say for sure, 12 years on and counting, that God has satisfied her with long life, both eternal and here on earth. Although she's physically gone, her life lives on in our children, in the memories that we have, and in honorable events like this one today. So I can say that she still, in fact, enjoys a long life. Now, the evening before she passed, we were together at the hospital and we talked about many things. She was my best friend. She was my confidant since we had met first in 1995. And we talked about the future and what she would do when she concluded her maternity leave in 3 months. When we woke up in the morning, I ate her breakfast. She looked at me in some disbelief. I very quickly explained that the doctor's note was clear that she should not eat anything. And I was very averse to wastage of food, so I had to eat it. And we helped her get ready for the theater. Once she was on the trolley, we wheeled her to the theater. We were talking, we were joking. She was brave until I was told I couldn't access the theater because the plan was that I would go in with her. But I assured her I would be outside, and she tearfully smiled. She squeezed my hand. I took a few photographs. We exchanged love, pleasantries, and she disappeared behind the double doors of the outer part of the theater. The next time I saw her a few hours later, she had forever gone silent. The epitaph on her tomb reads, "Rest, dear mother, friend, and wife, away from this world of strife, in God's eternal embrace of love, in that beautiful home above." And for me, it sums up who she was and what she believed in. So, while carrying out her maternal functions, natural maternal functions, Helen met her death. And she's not alone. Because from that date to today, women in Uganda continue to die in this manner. Sometimes it's the lack of care, sometimes, like Helen, it is the lack of blood transfusion. Sometimes the distance to the health facility is so long, distance is so great that they never get there. Sometimes facilities don't exist. And they are recorded as statistics in the public record. But for those of us who lose them, they are irreplaceable, loved human beings. They are part of our lives. And at the end of today, ladies and gentlemen, as has happened every day since Helen died, 15 or so families in this country will grieve. They will ask the question, why? But life will continue around them, the same as it did around us. When we grieved, when we cried, when we wept, we sobbed. Our leadership will continue to give us statistics that things have improved. Those questions linger, and these families continue to ask questions that cannot be answered. Or the answer comes too late. It is deplorable, ladies and gentlemen, that this continues to happen. It is unacceptable that our states are in this condition and that they still fail us. It is necessary that we rise up and we must stop this. Helen and I were blessed with children. Among them are two girls who reflect amazing younger versions of herself. They are beautiful, they are focused, they are intelligent, they are friendly, they are warm beings. One day they too will carry out these natural maternal functions. And when that time comes, I always wonder, will we have eliminated this problem? Or will we still be showing statistics of maternal mortality? Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I must ask again that we each take up the responsibility to end this kind of unnecessary loss of life. I hope you will feel that it is your duty, male or female, to do something about this. It was time yesterday, it is time today, it will be too late tomorrow, because ladies and gentlemen, Black women's lives matter. Thank you, and I wish you good deliberations.
Thank you very much, Ernest. So moving. A dark lawyer rising in a profession who stood against corruption, a Christian, a mother, no impossibility. Her life lives on. 12 years. Are we still asking that question? Should questions continue to be asked? Should we continue to have statistics? She's irreplaceable. May her gentle soul continue to rest in peace. Her life lives on. Thank you very much, Ernest. We are now going to the lecture. And Ernest asked us, should those questions continue to be asked? Should we continue to have statistics? I'll be calling on Dr. Folashade Adegbite, who will introduce our three erudite and distinguished speakers to us, and then we'll take the lecture. Folashade, over to you.
Thank you very much, Prof. We have three distinguished speakers for this great lecture. The first and the main or lead speaker is Professor Friday Okonofua, MD, PhD. Professor Okonofua is a professor of obstetric and gynecology and a fellow of the Nigeria Academy of Science and the director of the International Federation of Gynecology and Obstetrics, and as honorary advisor on health to President Olusegun Obasanjo of Nigeria. Professor is a global champion in women's rights. a discipline where he has published more than 270 journal articles and obtained 46 international research grants. He is the founder of the Women's Health and Action Research Center, one of the Nigeria's leading NGOs, and the founding editor of the African Journal of Reproductive Health. Professor Okonufua is a member of the editorial board of the British Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and a reviewer to several international journals. He is the current editor-in-chief of the Proceedings of the Nigerian Academy of Science, published by the Nigerian Academy of Science. He has served as program officer at the Ford Foundation and as consultant to several international agencies, including the MacArthur Foundation and the World Health Organization. Professor Friday Okonufua is a team leader of the World Bank Center of Excellence in Reproductive Health, Innovation, and the coordinator of the World Bank project at the University of Benin. Prof has just recently completed his term as a pioneer vice chancellor of the first University of Medical Sciences in Ondo State in Nigeria. And now, Prof is the Director of Grants and Research at the University of Benin in Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Professor Friday Okonufua. The second is Dr. Abiola Akinode Afolabi. Dr. Afolabi is a human rights attorney and a lecturer at the University of Lagos, Department of Public Law. And she teaches gender and the law, human rights and civil liberties, and constitutional law. Abiola is a prominent feminist activist in Africa and a leader in the civil society sector, where she leads the board of several progressive and impactful organizations across Africa. She's currently the chairperson, Transition Monitoring Group, the foremost election observation group, and the West African Network for Peace, WANEP. She's also the founding director of Women Advocate Research and Documentation Center, WADC. Dr. Abiola Akinode Afolabi is the current Secretary General of the West African Law and Religion Society. Dr. Abiola is a graduate of the Law from the Faculty of Law, Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife. She had a master's degree from the University of Notre Dame Law School, Center for Civil and Human Rights in Indiana, USA. And she later proceeded and obtained a doctoral degree from SWAS, Faculty of Law, Social and Social Sciences, University of London. She has produced several research materials and publications in the area of her specialization and has worked as consultant to look on several projects for the Afolabi. And the last in Shakarao, Awan is a distinguished Chevening alumnus, a gender advocate, human rights activist, a professional mediator and conciliator, and a lawyer with over 25 years post-call experience in women and child rights policy and advocacy, conflict resolution, social research, sexual and reproductive health and rights. She obtained her first law degree training from Hamadu Bello University, Zaria.
Dr. Adigbite, the network is bad.
And had law school professional training after call to the Nigerian bar on the 16th of December. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
In 2006, she won the British government Chevening scholarship and proceeded to London, where she trained and obtained a postgraduate law degree in law and development from the School of Oriental and African Studies, SWAS, of the University of London in 2007. She's registered. She's a registered member of the International Bar Association, Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators, Association of Women in Development, AWI, Nigeria Bar Association, and a life member of the International Federation of Women Lawyers, FIDA. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Awa Evelyn Shakarau. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have over 150 participants from all over the globe, and COVID has its own advantages. Wow. Many people might not have been able to come over to Lagos, but here we are at this lecture. Now, we now ask Professor Friday Okonofua. You have 20 minutes. From the profile of the speakers, you can see we're in for a very good time. Please, as the papers are going on, if you have questions, please put it on the chat, and don't forget to put your name. Professor Okonofua, you have the floor, 20 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Please, before we go on, please can everybody please mute your phones or your devices so that we can listen to Professor Okonofua. Please go on, Prof.
Thank you very much, Professor Bambushe. I want to very specially thank the University of Lagos for this invitation to deliver this very important lecture. And without wasting time, because I do know that I have limited time to discuss what appears to be a very elaborate subject, I would like to go to the main topic, sharing of the PowerPoint. I don't know whether it's shared from you centrally or I should share it. What's happening? Hello? Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof. Go ahead, sir.
We can hear you.
To choose the topic, tackling
Prof, you are muted.
in Africa.
Okay.
No, I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
I have not chosen this topic because I believe I have not chosen this because of the manner in which Helen died, because from the narrative that Ernest have provided, it's evident that Helen had the best of this world. But I think I have specifically chosen this. Next slide. Is it going on? Who's going to next slide? I've chosen this because of the nature of Helen. She lived passionately. She did very well in a postgraduate, but she unfortunately died of a complication that would have been prevented if what she lived for in the world had been systematically averted. At the time she died, according to what I've read and what I've heard her husband say, she had gained extreme reputation for honesty, compassion, and transparency, and for gender equality, attempts to ensure that women had the best in life. But unfortunately, she became a victim. And I believe that the death of Helen, while performing nature's role of childbearing, is a very sad reminder that our culture has not been completely fair to women in many ways. And I think throughout the African continent, to date, we know that about 300,000 women die every year from childbirth all over the world. 99% of those deaths occur in developing countries, most of which is in Africa. I believe that throughout the African continent, adequate protective mechanisms have not been provided to women. So I'm talking on behalf of Helen to challenge some of the remaining problems that confront the ability of the continent to deal with maternal mortality. I've done a lot of work on maternal mortality over years, and I believe that one of the very remaining challenges that need to be confronted is the systematic barrier placed on the girl child and women right from the time they are born. And I believe that these are the root of the very adverse consequences that women eventually suffer during childbirth. And we know that the overall objective of the Helen Kanzira lecture is to raise awareness and to contribute to the debate around the discourse of sexual and reproductive rights of women, generally, and mental health rights specifically. And I've taken the opportunity to look at previous lectures. They have been very good, that they provided deeper understanding of the various determinants of maternal death. Therefore, I've decided to take a different dimension in this particular lecture, specifically to explore the linkages between gender inequality, social inequity, and unfairness, increasing the likelihood of maternal death. The literature on maternal mortality is so replete with examples of gender inequality and social inequity. And as I go on throughout this lecture, you see the reason why those two things, or those two unfairness, remain some of the basic determinants that need to be addressed if we are to completely remove maternal death from the experiences of the African region. To date, we know that maternal mortality rate is high, is about is compared to other regions of the world, and that a woman who is born in Africa has a lifetime risk of 1 in 16 from dying, whereas in Sweden, where I did my PhD, which has one of the best maternal health indicators in the world, is in the region of 1 in 2,000 women. And the maternal mortality, MDG, Millennium Development Goal, which was which we attained, which we reached in 2015, aimed at reducing maternal mortality by 2/3, was not achieved. And the new target of trying to get 70 per 100,000 by the year 2030 of the Sustainable Development Goal may not be achieved in Africa if we leave out the issue of inequality, gender inequality, and inequity. So the lecture is focused on this. How do we do this? We know the medical causes of maternal mortality: hemorrhage, hypertensive diseases of pregnancy, puerperal infections, things like unsafe abortion, complications of cesarean section. As probably when I listened to Ernest, I suspected that Helen may have died from complications of some type of operative techniques. Those are some of the causes of death. We know that these causes occur all over the world. What are less well known and indeed well responded to in many parts of Africa are the social and cultural determinants that increase the likelihood of these deaths, especially in underprivileged populations of women. Now, there are social determinants. Before a woman dies, there are several background determinants, health-seeking behavior of complications, and this health-seeking behavior may be adverse, especially if the socio-economic and cultural background factors are not appropriate. And I've listed this as including delay in decision-making. Women often delay because of some adverse social consequences. The conditions in which they are placed, whenever they have complications of pregnancy, they delay in deciding to go to a health facility. And even when they eventually agree to go to a health facility, they have difficulties in arriving at the health facility. And even when they arrive at the health facility, they are often inadequacies, inappropriate. I listened to Ernest when she said that, Helen used the private hospital because the public hospitals are not very adequate. And that is the situation we have in many African countries. If the public health facilities were adequate, perhaps Helen would have been delivered, in a good health facility where all preparation would have been made for her to deliver. So what are these? There are so many background determinants, but I will only focus on 2 on this presentation. First is social inequity, social class. We know very well that women who die during childbirth are often on the lower social class. They are often poorer than their colleagues, and they often reside in rural populations. And then gender inequality is the second one. The ability of women to take decisions. You'll be surprised that in some parts of Africa, women cannot even go to a health center unless they get permission from their husbands. the practice of very harmful cultural practices. Gender-based violence, we can both directly and indirectly affect women's health. And then indeed, the poor representation of women in the political and economic spaces. Those are areas that we can broaden, and these are areas that directly and indirectly affect the likelihood that women will experience maternal death. And there are three areas, we call it the triangle of neglect, as to why women eventually suffer from maternal deaths. And these are around technical. We know the technical issues everywhere. We know those of us in the health profession and those of us who practice maternal years over the years know why women die and what can be done on the technical basis to prevent deaths. And we know that up to date, there have been a lot of research and programs to really determine what works. But what has been lacking are the political commitment to make some of these interventions work, as well as the adverse cultural circumstances. Even when the technical environment is known, or when the technical issues are well known, unless there's a good political environment and a very good cultural norm to address these technical issues, it will be very difficult. So I call this a triangle of neglect. All of these three factors in sub-Saharan Africa are consistently being neglected: technical, political, and cultural norms. The essential safe motherhood intervention for safe motherhood are well known to prevent maternal death. These are based on the 5 pillars of family planning, post-abortion services, antenatal care, clean delivery, postnatal care, essential obstetric care. And of course, we know that if these are provided, the likelihood of maternal death will be limited. And this will be under the basis of basic provision of basic healthcare services, equity, and emotional and psychological support. To what extent are these available in some of the most deprived regions of the world is a big question. And to what extent are political agencies willing to provide them on a continuous basis? I want to say that one of the things that have been said about maternal safe motherhood in various parts of the world is that men are the ones that control this provision of these health technical factors that will reduce the likelihood of maternal death. But if women were in authority, if they had more voices to take decision, will they be the same? That is the question that has already been answered. We know that from some works that in some parts of the world, we know that when the political will is high, when government provide political commitment to address women's health, to reduce equity, to reduce female inequality and address inequity, we are very, very much aware that it will lead to reduction of maternal deaths. An example is Ondo State, where a former governor of that state, Dr. Mimiko, established a very good initiative called the ABA Initiative, which resulted in the significant reduction in maternal mortality. So to date, by now, we do know that in much of sub-Saharan Africa, political will is still much lacking, and that needs to be addressed if maternal deaths will be reduced. And Professor Kay Harrison, who does so much work, has talked about political chaos as the basis of maternal deaths that leads to various conditions. Apart from maternal deaths, we have injured mothers, dead babies, PVF, etc., that harm women. And for every single case of maternal death that we have in the environment, we have about 30 others who suffer severe complications and who live for life with some of those complications. So clearly, we need more attention to be paid to these issues. One of the causes of inequity, we know that women who live in rural areas are at greater risk of maternal deaths as compared to those who live in urban areas, especially because health facilities are often not available in rural areas. Then wet quintiles, women who are the lowest wet quintiles have higher risks. Whereas poverty also, those who are unemployed and extremely poor are more likely to experience maternal mortality. And this is the slide I'm showing here to show the relationship between poverty .
Hello, Prof. Hello, Professor Okonofua. We can't hear you. It appears the network of Professor Okonofua is bad. Maybe we'll go on to the next speaker until we have Professor Okonofua. He has just about 5 more minutes. So maybe we'll call on the next speaker, Dr. Abiola Akiyode Afolabi. Please, you have 15 more minutes. Maybe later on when Professor Okonofua is back, we'll take him to give his conclusion. Dr. Abiola Akiyode.
Thank you very much.
Afolabi.
Thank you very much.
You.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you.
Me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right, thank you. I want to see whether I can share my screen. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, I want to share my screen. Okay, thank you very much. I will just kick off from where Prof had left us. So hoping that they come back to conclude his papers. My response is actually basically going to be looking at this conversation from human rights perspective, and also to look at laws and constitutions and how this have helped in improving the situation of women, and also what other social and legal intervention we have had, as Africans to address maternal mortality issue. I want to thank the organizers of this meeting for bringing this issue that is so much critical at this time and has always been to light. And I want to also further commiserate with the husband of Helen Kanzira. When I heard him speaking earlier on, I was so moved to tears because this is the reality of our life. Since COVID-19 started in April, I've had to handle about 2 cases of maternal death. And I've had to listen to husbands of women who died during childbirth, speaking to me. So when he was speaking, I was quite moved because it's such a moment that you really don't want to think about. And this is the reality of our life. And I cannot but agree with him about the fact that when he said women's lives matter so much because of the broken promises, because of the challenges that we have been having on the issue of maternal health. And I'll start by talking about maternal health as a global problem, which is what all of us know. And some of the issues have been raised by Prof. women and girls are entitled to access to quality maternal health care. And I see it from a point of human right, because it has to do with our right to life. And of course, there are numerous human rights norms which made clear the provision for access without any form of discrimination as regards class, creed, socioeconomic, or political status. When Prof was talking, Prof emphasized the fact that the issue of maternal mortality also had issues relating to class. It's common in rural area, than in urban area. I'm also going to be asserting, some of these issues. There are laws and policies of many governments across the world, and unfortunately, they are falling short of this obligation. They are placing certain group of women, particularly women in conflict setting and women under traditional and religious inhibition. They're making them much more vulnerable to healthcare, maybe because of illiteracy and a whole lot of other things. And what we often see is that this group often faced with lack of access to adequate antenatal care, insufficient or substandard care, and a lack of access to affordable skilled care during childbirth. So what we see is that access to sexual and reproductive health care services, particularly for those in rural area and also those in conflict setting and other instances like migrant women, becomes highly difficult. As we all know, it's a major public health crisis, and I think Prof had emphasized that. Yeah, we cannot say that enough. World Health Organization have rolled out data that are very unacceptable. While there are recognition of the fact that there has been overall reduction during 2010 and 2017 by the World Health Organization data, we still also recognize that this period still accounted for about 86% of the estimated global deaths in 2017, particularly for sub-Saharan Africa. And that means about 2/3 of the entire maternal deaths actually occur around us here, with Nigeria also having about 20% of the total maternal deaths worldwide, while South Asia accounted for nearly 1/5, which is about 58,000. When we frame existing inequality and inequities in maternal health, they do not only endanger the health and lives of thousands of women, but also contravene a critical thing, which is the fact that government has obligation to protect the rights of women, to promote the rights of women. And African governments, they have been part of all the human rights instruments that we're talking about, which includes the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. In 2005, 53 African leaders came together and come up with the Maputo Protocol. And the protocol itself is very clear in terms of their responsibility, to eradicate and to lead us to a zero tolerance to maternal mortality. And as if we recall, in 2001, African states came up with a commitment to support health system with 15% of the annual budget. And if you look at that reality today, it is not true. Nigeria, for example, has not been able to comply to that. In actual fact, have not been able to get to 15% of their annual budget to health. It's always between 6 and 7%. A study from World Bank had also shown clearly that deaths during pregnancy are preventable and cost as little as $6 to save a woman's life. And still yet, we're in a situation whereby thousands of women still die during childbirth. So one of the things that is recognized and which Prof had raised that has been a major driver for the high maternal mortality ratio is the existing gender inequalities, which stems from a whole lot of things, particularly in access to quality health services and the gap between the rich and poor. And I think that with the COVID-19, it becomes much more clear, to all of us, the reason why that huge number of maternal mortality around the world, with the health system collapsing, shows that there is not much contribution in terms of to the health system, in most of the countries, both developed and underdeveloped countries. The reports that we have shown that maternal mortality ratio in low-income countries in 2017 is about 462 per 100,000 live births, versus 11 per 100 live births in high-income countries. So there are disparities in that regard. And of course, further research has also shown that in fragile states, particularly countries, states in conflict, they are being put in high alert, and Nigeria is also are included. Furthermore, one key factor that's also clear or issue is that adolescent girls are more vulnerable, especially in countries where there is early child marriage and a whole lot of other things. So you find out that girls under 15 years old have more complication in pregnancy. And you also notice that childbirths are higher among adolescent age, between 10 and 19, compared to 20 to 24. So the average number of deliveries attended by a skilled healthcare personnel in Africa is put at about 47%, lower than the world average of 60% and 88% of the southern and eastern part. So there's also the issue of contraceptive use and family planning, which Prof had actually raised when he started his conversation. But the reality is that the data is quite horrendous. However, what the number has also given to us is just an abstract idea of the human implication of the Holocaust scale destruction of women's life that we keep seeing on a daily basis. It's like having to pack an plane and the plane crashes back every now and then. And they cannot, so the agony, they cannot capture the agony of loss, the hardship and limitation of life prospects suffered by often children who are left without mother, husbands, the socio-economic loss of productive capacity, which oftentimes results in psychosocial problems, poverty, and underdevelopment that we see around us. So all this ordinarily, if the government is sincere about dealing with this issue, should have made this issue of maternal mortality a state emergency, a first order problem in sub-Saharan Africa. But up till now, we have not seen much of that. There's been a lot of demand by civil society and a whole lot of group, but very little is being done in this regard. There's been a lot of issues, factors that are seen as what has been responsible for this. It could be literacy, poor access to reproductive information, and a whole lot of other things. I would move because of time, but I want to make the point that Prof had made earlier about the issue of lack of political will, and of course the issue I raised about the budget to tackle the problem. If we don't address those issues of political will and resource expenditure to tackle the problem, it might become a big problem. It will continue to be the problem that we need to deal with year in, year out. So my proposal here is that we cannot address this issue without, using the human rights approach and all the state responsibilities responsible for maternal health. The Declaration of Alma Mater 1978 says government have a responsibility for the health of their people, which can be fulfilled only by the provision of adequate health and social measure. So in that case, the government is expected, to be responsible to take a whole lot of steps. And this can only be done with laws. We already have laws and treaties, which government has ratified. And I also argue that there are constitutional provisions that hold the government, that would hold the government accountable in this regard. And I take an example of Nigeria. The Constitution of Nigeria, by Chapter 2 of the 1999 Constitution, sets out fundamental objective and directive principle of state policy, under which Section 14 clearly states the responsibility of the government, to take responsibility in this regard. And of course, if there are ambiguity in that regard, Nigeria is also through its law, also domesticated the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, which further, affirm this across this in Nigeria. So the point I'm trying to raise is that this provision is also very common across Africa. So it's not only Nigeria alone, it's also every other place. Now, this obligation also is supposed to go in line with the 2030 SDG mark, which have a lot of indicators that we are expected to meet, to be able to achieve reduction in maternal mortality. If we are applying HR human rights approach, there are a whole lot of things that are critical that can help in terms of moving to the indicator. Human rights approach can address disadvantages and discriminatory practices that continue to make women vulnerable. It's also a potent instrument that can hold government accountable. It also helps to articulate government's obligation. And I'm going to demonstrate a little bit further how human rights approach has helped in some instances. As we are aware, there are a lot of human rights resolutions that have spoken on the issue of maternal mortality. For example, there is the Human Rights Committee Resolution 1118 of 2009, which has reiterated that incidence of maternal mortality is a violation of women's right to life dignity, non-discrimination, and highest attainable standard of health. And has also further emphasized the inequities that we are talking about, that deaths and injuries are aggravated by poverty, gender inequality, and discrimination, and other factors, including inadequate access to health facilities and lack of infrastructure. The Human Rights Council also has some form of technical guidance on maternal mortality, where they raised issues that are very germane, including the issue of budget and planning, need for empowerment of girls and women, and needs for participation, which is a point that Prof also addressed earlier. The Committee on Socio-Cultural Rights also emphasized that in their general comment 14 and 22 to express the need to take more, to do more in terms of addressing, making health available, accessible, acceptable, and also increasing the quality of health. Likewise, if you look at the CEDAW Committee report on maternal mortality for Nigeria, for Sierra Leone, for Liberia. So my point is that there's been a whole lot of push in terms of human rights, statutory bodies, raising the issue for governments of different countries to take the issue of maternal mortality very important. So in terms of way forward, there has been a lot of case law, and that has been a way that lawyers and civil society practitioners have been dealing with this issue. There's been cases in India, for example, I put the case of Laxmi, where the court held that government can be held accountable for maternal mortality. The court also held in this case that compensation be paid by government to the family of a woman who died during childbirth, and this was in 2012. And there's also another case which I cited here. There's been about 2 cases also that established this same pattern in Kenya and also in Nigeria of recent, which was also a case that I participated in, on detention of women in public facilities. So in terms of best practice, there's been a lot of case documentation, and I think that it cannot be enough. We need to document the case so that it can also stand in line with the data that is being pushed forward with regards to maternal mortality, to bring it into reality. Then there is a need for more strategic litigation in national and international courts and regional courts. As we speak, some organizations, Women Advocates, Center for Reproductive Rights, have actually gone before the African Commission to put up some of these cases. There is also for shadow reports that can complement some of the issues. There are also freedom of information laws in different countries that we can use to further buttress some of these issues. So in conclusion, it's important to link data and with legal strategies. So my point is that the issue can also only be resolved by law or human rights principle. There must also be social accountability. We must equip the mass of women to hold government accountable so that we will stop the death that continue to happen needlessly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abiola Akiyode Afolabi. Thank you for keeping to time. You even gave us 1 more minute. Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope we are putting down our questions and I hope we are enjoying. You can imagine $6 US to save a life of a woman. And Professor Okonofa gave us so many causes of the death. Why should we go to private facilities when the public facilities are there? What is the government doing? Even during this COVID-19, it has shown us that the government is not doing anything about our public services. Now, Dr. Akiyode said a state of emergency should be declared about mortality. Men are in control. If women are in control, will there be a political will? Ladies and gentlemen, we'll go on to the last speaker, the last but not the least, and that is Awao Shekarau. Awao, you have the floor, 15 minutes. We're happy to have Professor Okonofa back. Professor Okonofa, please, at the end of Awao's presentation, you'll have about 5 more minutes that you lost. Thank you. Awao, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to present at this very important international conference. I count it a great privilege Can you see my screen?
No, not yet.
Okay. Give me. Okay, I need to click.
We're waiting for your screen to come up.
Can you see it now?
Good. Yes.
Okay.
Good to go.
Great. Yeah, so like I said, I count it a great privilege to have been called upon to participate in this 2020 Helen Kanzira lecture. I am going to, just kind of quickly reiterate some of the very critical issues, and I think most of them have been raised by our erudite Professor Okonofua, and my dear sister in law and in women activism, Dr. Abiola Akiyode. I think it is a very agreeable fact that Sub-Saharan Africa suffers from the highest maternal mortality ratio in the world. We've also, other speakers have also spoken to the fact that, Sub-Saharan Africa alone accounts for about roughly 2/3 of the maternal deaths globally. This is a WHO study that was published recently in 2017. For me, I think what is very critical to mention here is that maternal mortality only shows a portion of the global suffering, because each death is estimated that 20 more women will live with lasting morbidities or disabilities. In other words, the statistics we are hearing about those who have died, a lot more live with, disabilities which they live with for the rest of their lives because of injuries sustained during childbirth. So these are indeed, it's even very difficult to quantify them in number when we compare to the statistics of maternal mortality. Therefore, the situation is indeed critical. In Sub-Saharan Africa, the state of women's health can be best described through statistics that show death, disability, and suffering. I think many researchers have highlighted that fact. WHO has also said that 94% of all maternal deaths occur in low and lower middle income countries. Of course, Sub-Saharan Africa constitutes quite a huge percentage in that regard. Now, it is important to also state, and I think I recall Professor Okonofua mentioning the fact that the causes of these maternal deaths are actually avoidable, because there are medical solutions to see these high maternal deaths without any reduction in them. This is something that bothers a lot on the minds of medical practitioners, women's rights activists, and researchers. It's really a great pain, because if we have the solutions, then why are we not employing them to ensure that we do away with these statistics of deaf women? The reality is that when you consider the number of women dying daily from these preventable causes, it's like a plane crash, a plane crash with so many people dying. And anywhere in the world where there is a plane crash, it is a huge news item. And everywhere will practically stand still because of the reportage of that news. But our women are dying and nothing is being said about it. The SDGs, I'll try as much as possible to just speak to my presentation because I am aware there isn't much time. Now, between 1990 and 2015, the global maternal mortality decreased by 44% based on the targets that were set by the Millennium Development Goals. And as fantastic as those goals were, we fell short. Now the SDG now offers another unique opportunity for us to build on what progress has been made under the MDGs. The global SDGs seek to address the three interconnected elements of sustainable development: economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental sustainability. As many of us know, the maternal mortality reduction remains a priority under Goal 3, which is to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages under the new SDG agenda through to 2030. The World Health Organization in its publication, in its report on the EPMM strategies, that's strategies towards ending preventable maternal mortality. It outlines global targets and strategies for reducing maternal mortality under the SDGs. I think Abiola mentioned, those some of those goals and targets. However, as brilliant and scientific as these targets are, for them to be realistic and achievable, there is need for a holistic implementation that focuses on addressing the gender inequalities and social inequities which women face. This is very critical. Now, gender gaps favoring males in education, health, personal autonomy, and more are systematically larger in developing countries, particularly sub-Saharan Africa. I know that for many of us who are Africans, we know that this is a fact. The key root causes of these unequal outcomes for women and men are social institutions, norms, laws, and practices which discriminate against women and girls. Many of us have experienced them. I, for one, as a girl child growing, I experienced clear discrimination. I have shared my story about the fact that when I was young, my father proposed not to send me to school because he felt the scarce family resource should be used to train only the boys. Because I'm a girl child and very soon I'll grow up and be married off and I'll leave the family. That is the mentality of our people in Africa, particularly in the rural areas, who do not really understand why it is so important to train both the the girl child and the boy child as well. And so a lot of young girls till this very moment continue to face this discrimination. Poor countries by no means have a monopoly on gender inequality. Men earn more than women in almost all societies, and sub-Saharan Africa is not an exception. However, disparities in health, education, and bargaining power within marriage tend to be in countries with low GDP per capita. And in sub-Saharan Africa, I think that is our major lot. In terms of social inequities, they are inexplicably linked to gender inequality. Social institutions have generally been accepted as a framework to explain what is stopping women and girls from achieving equal outcomes in areas such as education, employment, business, health, and political participation. There are so many researches that were conducted in this regard. The World Bank, International Finance Corporation, OECD, and all. Now, using the OECD Development Center Social Institutions and Gender Index, which was launched in 2009, the following sub-indices were graded as root causes of gender inequality. Discriminatory family code. Within the families, I just shared my story. Within the families, the girl child is extremely discriminated. I truly wouldn't have seen the four corners of a school, but for the insistence of my mother, she kept on pressurizing and pressing my father to see the need to send me to school. And after so much pressure, he budged and I went to school. And today, I have become the beacon and the cornerstone of my family. You know, and so these discriminatory practices in the family, they are very, very rampant. And unless we dislodge them, you know, gender inequality will continue to, gender equality will continue to be a mirage. There's also the restricted physical integrity. You know, even in the religion, you are told that the woman is the weaker sex, you know, and so a lot of women, you know, imbibe some of these narratives, and on their own, they feel really limited, they feel weak, and feel that they need the affirmation of the male figure in their lives to be able to affirm themselves. You know, so this is a very, very critical indices that, you know, breed and continue to perpetuate social inequities in our communities. Of course, on bias. In some communities, once a girl child is given birth to, it is a sad news. It is a sad news. In some communities, in Nigeria particularly, the Southeastern community, when a woman is married in a family and does not have a son, it is said that she is not yet fully grounded in that family. Therefore, these are some of the drivers of social inequities in our society. Of course, restricted civil liberties, restricted resources and entitlements. Even in terms of inheritance, the male child and the female child do not inherit equally in some communities. And for instance, in some communities in Nigeria, a woman cannot inherit land. And yet, statistics have shown that in the agricultural space, women constitute the highest number of workers, but most of them are, you know, peasant farmers, or they are peasant, you know, farmers who are employed with a meager income, and so they are not able to compete favorably with their male counterparts. Now, even when they want to have access to credit facilities in order to boost their business income, they need to present a collateral, mostly land, which they do not own. If you see here a woman owning a land, she must have either bought it by herself, but for most women, they do not inherit land. This is a sad reality of women in sub-Saharan Africa. Other areas where gender inequalities and social inequities are quite pronounced and accentuated are education, health, gender-based violence, employment, decision-making power within the family, freedom of choice and life satisfaction. In education, the enrollment of girl child in school is really very low. Very low. The few who successfully get enrolled, by the time they get to a certain age, they are pulled out of school and given out in marriage. And so you don't, in a situation where you have high enrollment at the end of the day, they do not stay, they are not allowed to stay and conclude their studies before being married off. You know, so education is very critical. And we all know that for a girl child who is educated, when she gets married, her contribution to the society is very, very, you know, very important. And when you also look at the health indices of an educated mother,
please round up.
They are higher and more sustainable than that of an uneducated mother. And so these issues are very, very critical and must be, you know, engaged and addressed in order to deal with the social inequities and the gender inequalities that abound within them.
Well, please round up.
In conclusion,
thank you.
There is, I think, a very important point which has been raised is the fact that there is need for strong political will on the part of governments in sub-Saharan Africa to address issues of gender equality and social inequities. This is very critical because without the political will, nothing will be done. We need to pay attention to girl child education, not just enrollment, but sustain them in school until they graduate. Research also shows that education of women is higher in those countries where the maternal mortality rate is lower and increases the general health of the population. We need to ensure that an effective and efficient health system, especially during pregnancy and delivery, and access to safe drinking water are fundamental pillars for maternal health. Need for equal opportunities for women in employment. There is also need to abolish discriminatory laws and practices against women. This can be achieved through domestication of CEDAW and other gender equality regional and global instruments. We need to take action towards elimination of gender-based violence through legislation and active enforcement. Ensure the promotion and protection of women's rights. Lastly, invest in the economic empowerment of women. This is very critical. I want to thank you for your time. I want to say that indeed, women's rights are human rights and we must pay attention to them. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Awal. The three speakers have given their lecture. Now it's time for the question and answer. Professor Okonofua, when you are answering your questions, please, the remaining 3 minutes that you had, you'll be able to give us maybe your concluding remarks. We have so many questions and some are directed to particular speakers while some are general. Please, I want to employ the speakers. Please let the, your remarks be very short. We have many questions. Now we have one from Sylvia Gavigan from Ireland. She's a family member, thanking everybody for participating, but she's saying that education is critical to emancipation of women in Africa, and that what can be done to increase girl child education in empowering more women from the young age, that their voices matter. How can we bring more women voices to the table? Awal, maybe you'll take that briefly, please. Maybe in just 1.5 minutes, please. You've talked about the girl child and your example is a good one.
Yeah, the girl child education, girl child education is very, very critical, I must say, because it is like like using one stone to kill so many birds. You know, there's need for a lot of sensitization, awareness creation for people, particularly in rural areas, to see the need to send their girl child to school, and also to change that perception that sees the girl child as nothing but just a property that can easily be given out, and when she's married out, she's gone. I mean, there's nothing. We see her as not equal match with her boy counterpart. I think it is very, very important. And there's history to show that women who are educated have turned out to be backbone of their families. And so sometimes it's just based out of lack of exposure, lack of understanding, and ignorance. We need to clear all that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Awal. This question is directed to Professor Okonofua, who is a medical doctor. And the question is coming from Mary Ann Nkechi Obiagbaoso Udegbunam from the Women's Advocate Research and Documentation Center. She says that over the years, several interventions have been carried out in addressing maternal mortality, but the situation keeps on getting worse. She's asking, what do we need to do different in ensuring that more women do not die while giving birth? And what new approaches can we adopt? Professor Okonofua, are you there? Professor Okonofua?
I'm hearing you now.
Yes.
Now, that's a very important question. And I'm sorry that I was lost out in my computer crashed. I really want to apologize because I was going to go to that element towards the end of the lecture.
Okay, so what do we need to do differently?
I've been working on maternal mortality for almost 20 years. And one of the residual areas of intervention that needs to be done, we've been addressing this issue from point of view of the technical interventions, that what needs to be done to improve family planning and so on and so forth. I think the two areas that have not been addressed is the political will. Because we need political will to scale up most of the interventions that we already know throughout the length and breadth of most parts of the country, so that we don't just locate it in some few areas and leave out other areas. Secondly, we need to be able to address the gender and cultural norms that prevent women from using services. You know, people keep saying it's difficult to address cultural norms, that it takes a long time. But this is the time for us to say, because those are the residual areas that need to be addressed, especially in developing countries. And we should be bold, we should be imaginative, we should hold politicians accountable for not promoting gender equality, for not doing things to empower women. We should hold them accountable for not putting women on the right plot. So I think that those are the residual areas, and I think that why the interventions have failed is that we have not laced it up with addressing the cultural norms that adversely affect women, and also the gender inequality issues, and also the fact that political will is not very strong for addressing these issues. I think those are the areas I believe we should address.
Thank you, Prof. Maybe you quickly take this question from Uzoma Prince Okparaku. How can women attendance to maternity clinic be increased? How can we increase the attendance to maternity clinics?
I've published in the last 3 years or 5 years, I've published papers on the barriers that limit women's attendance at clinics. And some of them need to be addressed. One of them is costs. For example, there are several women who cannot attend because of cost of services. And so we need to do what I call cost alleviation, whether we like it or not. We need safety nets to increase the possibility that all women, regardless of their circumstances, are able to attend clinics. Also, distances from health facilities. We do know that most facilities are located in urban centers. Many are not in rural areas. So that when women fall sick in pregnancy, they often are not able to they are often not able to access health facilities because they are not in the rural communities, and so on and so forth. So I think specific interventions. Also, we also know that women talk about abuses, when they attend health facilities, that health providers are not friendly. So we need to look at providing services that are women-friendly in many of our health facilities. Again, the government has a role to play. They have a role to play in ensuring that the services that we provide in health facilities are user-friendly and that women are able to access them. There's no discrimination between various categories of women, that all women, whether they are poor or rich, are attended to in an equal manner. Those are some of the issues that we need to address. to increase access to health facilities for women.
Thank you. Prof, a final question for you, because this has to do with the medical. We have two lawyers and you, the medical practitioner. How do we hold medical personnel for their, how can we hold them liable for their contribution to maternal mortality, for their incompetence and carelessness? Ngozi Udombana is asking this question. How can we hold doctors liable?
Well, we know the laws are there. If we also have Nigerian Medical Council, for example, puts their health providers responsible when there's a maternal death. There are provisions where the Medical Council calls those doctors to action. They actually brought to question in so many ways, and some of them are removed. Their names are removed from the register. So I think that our women should be able to ask questions when they are accessing the services. And if there's any evidence that health providers have not done the right thing, they should be called to question. And if possible, the law courts are there to handle such matters. And I want to say that that is exactly what should be done. We have no reason whatsoever, the health profession has no reason whatsoever to provide poor services, to women. If they cannot provide, we have what is normally done is that if you have difficulties in providing the best quality service to a woman who is pregnant, you refer such a woman to a high level, another level of facility, not to keep her until she dies in facility. So that's what I would say to that.
Thank you very much, Professor Okonofua. Dr. Akiyode, this question is for you, for Muyiwa Adigun from the Faculty of Law, University of Ibadan, a postdoc candidate at the Center for Human Rights. How can we have a law that will make it mandatory for political office holders to obtain medical treatment in public hospitals, since this law will go against the interest of political class? What is the strategy that can be adopted to have this law? In addition, there is a question that what are the first ladies of sub-Saharan Africa doing in terms of maternal mortality? Dr. Akiyode, please.
Okay, the first question, which has to do with medical tourism. I know that sometimes ago in Nigeria, there was a bill for an act to amend the National Health Act 2014 to regulate international trips for medical treatment by public officers. But the bill was actually thrown out because of so many issues. Everybody has the right to use any medical facilities that they like. So yes, while the government can say that the government would not use the public money, to support medical tourism for public officers, it might be difficult to have a law which we say people cannot make a decision with respect to the kind of medical support they want to have or not. So, but I know that there was a bill like that, but the bill was thrown out by the National Assembly in Nigeria. But it's actually possible. And of recent, the president of the country had come to say that they are not going to invest any money in supporting public officials, from using public funds to travel for medical reasons. But we also all know what is happening in the real sense. So my point is that it's a two-way thing. We can insist that our money cannot be used to support medical tourism, but so as to strengthen but with the COVID, everybody is here anyway. So I think that's the reality, that we must invest more in our health system. Now, the
first ladies.
The second question about the first ladies, where unfortunately we don't have constitutional rule for first ladies. These are also not, they are not also acceptable balance, but I know that some of them have been taking steps in supporting in this regard, since part of the security votes go to them to do their pet projects. I know, for example, in Lagos, there's been a lot of support on maternal health with respect to work on the first lady, likewise in Inequity state and some other states in Nigeria. But for me, I think that we should move beyond tokenism and all. It should be something that should be institutionalized. if you look at the National Health Act, for example, in Nigeria, it talks about a particular fund, to be put in supporting primary health care services. I think that those are the areas of laws that we need to open up, to be able to hold government accountable, to ask them to invest resources so that women will not continue to die on preventable deaths. I think there is also another question there about.
No, I'll just take 2 more questions. Time is running out, but I'll just ask for your indulgence to just ask 2 more questions, maybe just take about 5 minutes. What role can a welfare health scheme by the state government in the proposed state of emergency on MD, that's Abiola Sonny? You'll take that, Dr. Akiyode, and you also take this question by Dr. Oluwakemi Adekile about what efforts are geared towards inclusion of leadership for women in healthcare system. You just take that briefly for us.
On the question by Professor Sonny, I think the national healthcare is also very important because state and local governments, they have different rules, and that has been one of our challenges, for example, in a federal state, where you have 3 levels of government. And we also know that there is always zero allocation to the local government, and that's where the primary healthcare system is. So I feel that having a medical welfare package is quite important. If you listen to Professor Okonofua, one of the issues that Prof also raised for the reason why women don't want to go to public facility is because of the user fees, the costs, the attitude of the health workers, the long road to the health. Some of these issues can be addressed with welfare package. I know that in some parts of the state, for example, in Kaduna State, they had a method of going to pick the women from their homes to the hospital, and that's part of like a welfare package to support and the ABA project also does something like that. There is also another one by another state where they pay about they give women who are pregnant phones so that they can call and all of that. So welfare development laws can go a long way in addressing the problem of maternal mortality in Nigeria. So I quite agree with that.
Thank you very much. We have so many questions, but time will not permit us to take all these questions. So I'm going to ask the organizers, Faculty of Law, University of Lagos, and the Center for Human Rights, University of Pretoria. Maybe you'll answer some of these questions and we can put it on the chat or we do something. But I cannot but take this one, and it's from Helen Kanzira Jemima from the United States of America. She's Ellen's big sister, and she's thanking everybody on behalf of Ellen's mother and family, and also thanking Ernest and the organizers for this great work. She's saying that on behalf of the family, Ellen touched many lives. We would have loved to continue, but time is against us. And as I said, organizers, please do something. Look at the chat. Please answer some of these questions. Let the speakers answer some of these questions. Thank you very much for this question and answer session. I'll now call on Dr. Akinola Akintayo, the chairperson of the LOC of the lecture, to please give the vote of thanks. Once again, I really apologize. I wish we could take all these very good and important questions from Akorede Yusuf. We can see you. We can see Uzo. We can see Folashade Adegbite. We can see Shode, former Shode. Please, apologies. Over to you, Dr. Akinola Akintayo, for the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Ma. Prof. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate your very excellent moderation of this event. We are most grateful. Thank you, ma'am. But before I give the vote of thanks, Ashwani informed me earlier that some relatives of Helen Kanzira wanted to say a word or two. Ashwani, so we'll just give them like 5 minutes to do that. Ashwani, are they still on ground?
No, I think, thank you, Prof, and thank you, Dr. Akintayo. I think they already wrote it in the comments, but if there's anything like the family of Helen Kanzira wants to say to everyone present here, you can take 2 or 3 minutes to say it to us. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Eric Sunday. I'm Helen Kanzira's nephew. Her older sister's firstborn. She passed away in 2007, but before she passed away, she was one of our family's biggest role models, especially for all the girls. She was very educated, and she stressed education to all of us, and she lived her life the way she preached it. So I'm very glad and proud to see that her legacy still lives on. And I just want to say thank you for all of you guys for carrying it through with these annual lectures. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Is there anyone else who'd want to say a few words? Sylvia, I see your mic is on.
Thank you. I can't see you. Yes. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't want to take much time. Yes, I think my sister Carol, I think she's on here. If she's not on here, let me say just a very, very few words because I grew up. She is Carol. Can you come on because she's the big sister of our family?
Yeah, that's my mother, by the way.
Carol, if she's not on, I can come in.
No, she's not on right now, but I'm calling her right now so she can get on. Sorry.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
But you continue in the meantime.
Okay, I can continue when she comes on, she takes over. Yes, I'm based in Dublin and I am the Honorable Consul of Uganda to Ireland. I would like to thank the organizers for all what you have done. It's our pleasure. We are so appreciative. Helen was our stronghold in the family, as some of the speakers there said. Education for women, I mentioned it for girls. My area of study, my PhD is education for girls, for women. Please, what can we do to lobby for those girls, those women in the rural communities? As Helen, an educator, a lawyer, what she showed us. Thank you so much. I would love to see if we can get a foundation out of Helen, and we will be behind it as well. Thank you. On behalf of our mother, Auntie, we thank you so much, and all the whole family. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. If there's no one else, maybe I'll pass it back to Akinola for the vote of thanks. Thank you very much to the family.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Ashwani. Once again, thank you, family of Kanzira. We also appreciate you. We appreciate you participating in this very important conference. So I want to appreciate the Center for Human Rights for giving the University of Lagos the opportunity to co-host this event. As we can all see, it has turned out to be a very wonderful one. I also want to appreciate our speakers, Professor Okonofua, Dr. Akintayo Afolabi, and Hawa Shekarau. Thank you for presenting a well-researched and insightful and outstanding papers. I also want to thank the staff of the center that would just make this possible, in the person of Ashwani, Yolanda, Siwe. Thank you guys. We appreciate you. I want to appreciate my members, the committee members, the LOC of the University of Lagos that worked very hard with me to make sure this day can pass. Those are in the persons of Dr. Akintayo Afolabi Abdullah, one of the presenters, Dr. Shade Adegbite, my colleague who introduced the speakers, and also Mr. Ugo Ese. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to jump in real quick. I'm sorry. We were able to get a hold of Carol. She is just having a little bit of technical difficulties, and she is going to jump on and say a few words if that's still okay with you guys.
Okay, 1 minute.
Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Sorry about that. I think she's just trying to figure out how this whole thing works. I apologize.
It's fine.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, this is Peter Jamina. This is Carol's husband.
Sorry about that, guys. I think she lost her connection completely. I apologize.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you. So we can go on.
Hello.
So the last but not the least, I also want to thank our moderator, Professor Bangboshi SAN. Thank you very much, Ma, for the excellent moderation. We appreciate that you took time out of your very busy schedule to work with us and honor us with your presence and your participation. Thank you. Lastly, I want to thank the participants. Without you guys, we cannot be here. We appreciate you. God bless you for taking time out to participate and go on this journey with us. Thank you very much. God bless you. Lastly, my dean, Professor Ayodele Asenuwa. Thank you very much for the leadership. Thank you, ma'am. God bless you. To everybody, thank you. Bye-bye. See you next time. God bless you all.